in the Jungle Book, it's in the Jungle Book.
Going out on a limb here, I assume most viewers of this programme grew up with at least one or two Disney movies on their radar. Whether it's cherished memories of the movie theatre, owning a couple from the vault on VHS, or if you're young enough, you may have only ever experienced these movies via streaming or torrenting, in which case, fair enough, the Disney seal of quality was a load of bollocks anyway. If that is the case, then it's equally likely that you've seen the 1967 Disney adaptation of the classic The Jungle Book, a film that seemingly just cannot nail its titling. It's a film called The Jungle Book, which itself was an adaptation of a series of Rudyard Kipling short stories that were then actually collated into a Jungle Book. Naturally, with Disney apparently being kind of a big deal, the film garnered quite a bit of success, and has spawned sequels and spin-offs alongside the original short story books being adapted, readapted, modernised, and basically repackaged in more ways than you would think. But then, that's the nature of public domain works. While the Disney film may not be up for grabs, any man and his dog can freely take the original written stories and do with them as they wish. Which leads us to today's film, 2012's The Jungle Book, the movie. Now, on receiving this movie from a very kind and generous viewer of the channel, thanks again for that by the way, I was under the impression that this was going to be some kind of low-budget, computer-generated, 60-ish minute knockoff attempt at redoing the Disney movie, but changing things just enough so that they could claim it was based off of the short stories. But I was actually pretty wrong, because what this actually is kinda crazy. So, this is a bit of a tangle of a story, so please do bear with me, but this isn't actually a film. Yes, a film with the jungle balls to call itself The Jungle Book the Movie isn't actually a movie and isn't even based off of the books. Then again, I assume calling it The Kid in the Jungle That Does Stuff for a Bit, maybe, kinda, doesn't really have the same ring to it. No, this was in fact a TV series. A TV series consisting of 156 episodes and counting, running at 11 minutes a pop. It has 3 seasons and ran between 2010 and 2020 almost exclusively in India, France and Germany, and it had at least 1 or 2 holiday specials to boot. But when the time came to bring the series to English territories, such as the UK and US, DQ Entertainment, the company behind the series, either decided against it or were unable to secure distribution to those territories, so to try and get their stories in front of someone, anyone in the UK or US, they decided, in essence, to create an omnibus edition of the series, which they swiftly just rebadged as a movie to try and give the impression that this was a self-contained feature and not a cynical stick-and-paste job. To those not in the know, an omnibus is essentially a re-edit of films or a TV series to help bring the runtime down a bit, or to try and create a longer form but somewhat easier to digest version of the product. For example, in the late 90s and early 2000s, TV station UK TV Gold would take classic 4 and 6 part Doctor Who stories, lop off all the titles and credits barring the first titles in episode 1 and the credits in the final episode, they'd remove the cliffhanger, recaps and drop any scenes that weren't absolutely essential to the story, and then they'd broadcast them as 90-minute long omnibus editions that could fill a 2-hour block with adverts. Sometimes they can be quite effective. Soap operas in the UK before streaming used to run omnibus editions of the week's episodes on weekends to help people catch up with the latest goings-on quicker than watching the individual episodes. But it's very much dependent on the person editing these editions to be intimately familiar with the source material so that they only keep what's absolutely necessary and filter out the stuff that isn't. After all, the whole purpose of an omnibus is to be digestible and shorter than just sitting there watching 4 to 6 episodes back to back to back. That's the USP of them. Which is probably the biggest flaw with The Jungle Book the movie. But before we deep dive into that, what's all this about anyway? Well, this film consists of 6 episodes of the Jungle Book TV series stitched together human centipede style. Each episode opens with a brief pick-up from where the previous episode left off and ends in such a way that the next episode can pick up from it, which made it quite easy to just stitch these 6 episodes together. They literally just chopped the end credits and titles off each episode and, at most, do a little crossfade between when one episode ends and another begins to help smooth over the transition. But beyond that, it's The Jungle Book, and we're essentially just following the continuing adventures of Mowgli, Baloo and Bagheera as they live, laugh and learn their way through the trials of the jungle, all the while avoiding narrowly being eaten by Shere Khan and his toadying lackey Tabaki. These are all ultra simple plot lines, but highlights include an episode where one of the wolves from Mowgli's adopted wolf family challenges him to a foot race in order to decide if Mowgli is fit to continue living with the wolves, an episode where Shere Khan is basically trying and failing for 11 minutes to get some breakfast, an episode where Mowgli teams up with a monkey to help protect the jungle from treasure hunters who are looking to find the location of a lost temple full of gold that only the animals know about, an episode where Mowgli tries to find out who the bravest animal in the jungle is, and an episode where a baby elephant strays away from the herd and winds up trapped on a tall plinth, leading to Mowgli and the gang to try and save him before disaster strikes. And I'm really not downplaying those plot lines. This series was developed for kids aged between 3 and 7. This is pretty much about as complex as it gets, and because of that, we pretty much hit our first problem. Because, on their own, as individual TV episodes, these are basically inoffensive. They all pretty much run the same formula, which is that we open with the gang goofing around, something triggers an event, the gang work together to overcome that event, the event is overcome, and the gang can go back to goofing around. And for a short-form TV show that was generally played double-stacked as a 25 to 30-minute TV block, that's fine. Small doses are very kind to this series. But whacking 6 of them back to back to back, it's pretty insufferable. See, the scripts here aren't the real reason this thing failed to win me over. I mean, they aren't exactly brilliant, but they're tolerable for the target audience. But the fact that they literally just removed the titles and credits of these episodes, shoved them together with the smallest amount of tweaks, and then they called it a day, it's horrendous. It creates this never-ending circular feeling where the gang do 6 3-act structures over and over again in the most basic way possible. And because the tone's so simplistic and the characters are so basic and the scenarios are written specifically to be easily digestible to young audiences with short attention spans, there's nothing they can really do to spice it up even from a script standpoint, other than maybe to try and rejig the scenes within the episodes to try and create a longer form, more complex story, which they didn't want to do seemingly. As such, in this format, it feels like we're stuck riding at one level with no real sense of escalation or plot development for the full 62 minutes. There's no reward for sitting through this film, no end credits sense of recognition or validation. Not helped at all by the fact that the production company were even too cheap to make new titles and credits for the movie version of their series. They literally just used the opening titles of the first episode up on the plate and end with the end credits of the last episode they cut in, which in and of itself has problems because the opening titles include the title card for the episode they're starting with, which isn't even the first episode of the series, it's episode 4, The Race, and the end credits only credit the people involved in that final episode, meaning some of the cast who appeared in the other 5 episodes are missing. Bearing in mind that they had 52 episodes at least to source material from for this film at the time they built it, it really wouldn't have taken a scriptwriter or editor too long to cherry-pick key moments out from across those 52 episodes and essentially create a melting pot script that had 2 to 4 plot lines being intercut to and from to create the illusion of a multi-plot 3-act narrative. It just makes me think that this was either a really lazy attempt at squeezing the last few pennies of profitability out of this product, or they had this on hand to show investors and distributors, and they just decided to dump it on disc to try and make it profitable rather than it just sitting in someone's portfolio. That's probably my biggest problem with this whole venture, in fairness. It feels so half-hearted and thrown together. This isn't even really treated as an afterthought. It's treated as an, I had an hour free this afternoon so I made this, let's see if it'll print money. I mean, hell, I could probably cut something more engaging together, and I'm a schlub on the internet with nothing to my name but 8 to 9 years experience in film journalism, 20 years of filmmaking experience, and a good media and film production degree from a reputable university. Which is basically nothing these days. To bring it back around, as individual episodes, they're okay. The characters are basic but engaging, the dialogue is fine enough, it's a little oversimplistic, but then young children are the TA, and sometimes it's kinda sorta charming. The tone is definitely set to appeal to young kids, though how many young kids will sit and watch this, I can't say. It's fine on its own, but the total lack of effort to make any of this feature-length restructuring flow or work as a whole singular product is very off-putting and really just quite repetitive and dull, honestly. This film was directed by Tapaz Chakravarti, and what I mean by that is that he directed the TV series and then hired an editor to chop these episodes into a movie. Tapaz is the owner of DQ Entertainment, an animation company which I believe is stationed in India. They don't really produce their own shows, more they offer animation and cel shading services to television companies and game developers. DQ mainly work in children's television, with titles including The Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, The Miraculous Ladybug, The Penguins of Madagascar, and Curious George, amongst many others. As the owner, Tapaz's main role within the business is as a producer, for which he has 44 production credits. As a director, he has 4 credits, and all of them are for weird assembled Jungle Book movies, which, on the plus side, means I don't really have to cover any more of these because they're all pretty much going to be the same. But you better damn well believe I'll be covering his Jungle Book Christmas special from 2018 at some point. On the writing front, we have Jimmy Hibbert, Dave Fox and Frederick Valiant. Jimmy here is pulling double role as not only a writer, but as the voice of Baloo in the series. He has 75 writing credits in a career spanning from 1991 to the present day. Titles include Danger Mouse, Dennis the Menace and Bill and Ben, amongst many more. As for Dave Fox, he has 20 writing credits, mainly a mix of soap operas and dramas between 1999 and 2013, with credits including EastEnders, The Bill and Thomas and Friends. And, rounding off the triptych, Frederick has 10 writing credits, mainly for kids' TV programmes between 2007 and 2022, with hits including episodes of Code Lyoko, The Enchanted Village of Pinocchio and Bool and Bill. When it comes to the art direction of this piece, I personally felt like it was a bit of a game of two halves. For 2010 quality CGI animation for kids' TV, I didn't think it was too bad. I don't think time has particularly worked in the series' favour, with some of the textures used on the animals clearly being sourced from low-res sample sheets, but on the whole, the characters animate and move fairly decently. It's a colourful and vibrant show, and they don't shy away from a little quasi-rubber hose work here and there. The biggest issue I had with this is it just looks and feels so generic. Like, basically, I feel like if you asked any 3D animation student to come up with a wide appeal adaptation for the Jungle Book, 90% of them would end up looking something like how this looks. Which, while I'm sure it worked in the series' favour in terms of securing distribution, it absolutely did not work in making this feel distinct or stand out. It screams Dollar Tree bin from the top of its lungs. It's all very safe, overly generic, just different enough from Disney-style work that really stops it from striking out on its own and being able to define itself properly. Even if they'd maybe done something a bit interesting with Mowgli's character design, or maybe stylised it a little bit more away from the most generic tropes of the time, it maybe could have stood out a bit more and really defined itself against other adaptations. But as it stands, it literally just blends into the sea of other versions out there. Same goes with the voice actor direction. The English dub is predominantly an English cast, and all of the performances are just kind of unremarkable. Not awful by any stretch, but lacking any kind of depth or distinction that would make me stand up out of my chair, point wildly at the TV screen and scream, "You see what they're doing there? Genius!" The closest we get to that, in my opinion at least, is Nigel Pilkington as Tabaki, who manages to just eke in a lovely layer of smarmy sliminess to the character's line delivery to the point that I actually properly zoned in whenever his character appeared. He has a good level of animation to his voice and sells the smarmy henchman tone well, which I really enjoyed. I will also give some credit to Emma Tate as Mowgli here, who manages to balance childlike wonder with a sense of genuine frustration at times when Mowgli wants to go and do animal things, but the animals know that it'll probably result in him being killed horribly. She emotes well and gives an all-round good performance for the character. And finally, the soundtrack. It's pretty solid. Lots of woodwindy, percussive, jungly sounding music. A tropical style scoring that punctuates jungle life pretty perfectly, and is used fairly effectively in the individual episodes. Once again, unfortunately, when one episode is played back to back with another and then another, you quite quickly realise that they actually had a pretty limited soundtrack pool, and tracks quite quickly start to repeat and become a bit irritating, which is a real shame and kind of pulled down the overall production values for me a bit. The Jungle Book, the movie, began as a series in 2010 with 52 episodes running throughout the year. It was then followed up with a second season of 52 episodes in 2016, a Christmas special in 2018, and a final season in 2020, with more apparently planned in the near future. As for these films, well, this film was released in 2012 by Momentum Picture in the US on DVD as a standalone release, and then re-released at least a couple of times through the mid-2010s, with my version having come from a box set titled 6 Magical Fairy Tales, which showcased 6 CGI adaptations of public domain works, 5 of which came from DQ Entertainment, so look forward to that one, kids. Bizarrely, there's an authoring error on the 6 Magical Fairy Tales set, which is 2 discs, in which the Jungle Book movie is listed as appearing on disc 2, but is actually on disc 1. No idea why, but it's a budget release, so you better believe they aren't correcting that one. No extras to speak of either, it's cheap, cheerful and available in abundance, so if you're curious to check out a kind of sleep-inducing lazy cash grab, well, have at it. Oh, and for you digitally conscious folks, it's all on Amazon Prime Video under Jungle Book 2010, and as of September 2019 they have a YouTube Kids channel with over 2 million subscribers, which houses pretty much every episode of the show complete with watermarks, and to stay relevant to the YouTube ecosystem, you better believe they're recutting and repackaging all these episodes into multi-hour-long compilations while also shilling Jungle Book-style shovelware games like Snakes and Ladders. So, if you're curious to check them out, it won't cost you a penny. Enjoy. The Jungle Book, the movie, is not as good as the sum of its parts. A middle-of-the-road TV series is quickly turned into a total snooze fest by rushed, lazy editing, a lack of distinction or premium content to differentiate it from the TV series, and mixed ability attempts to smooth over cracks in the scripting. I think if you have kids and you maybe just watch 1 or 2 every once in a while, it could work out fine. But there are at least 4 of these movie versions, and I honestly can't imagine them getting any better if this first offering is as shallow as it is. One to avoid. I have 5 more DQ Entertainment movies to watch at some point. Good lord.